Something Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And I don't think we have any news.
No, not really.
Not really?
No. The only thing I've really seen banding around a lot is, sadly, I think David Duchovny's dog passed away this week.
Oh, okay, I missed that one. Is this Blue or a different dog?
Brick, I think he's called.
Okay.
Yeah, he's had it for a long time, I think.
I think he used to have a dog called Blue, but that might have been way before this. It's just like 90s.
Oh, Brick was really cute. I've seen a lot of photos of them, and, it's never nice to lose a pet. That's a bit sad news.
It is. What kind of dog is it? Is it a Queequeg dog? Can I believe it's a Queequeg dog?
It's not Queequeg. I don't really know dog breeds. It's quite small. I'm sure someone can actually tell. It's got kind of like German Shepherdy sort of markings, but kind of corgi-sized.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a mixed breed or something like that. I'm afraid I don't know dog breeds very well.
Well, neither do I, but...
It's cute.
It's a shame it's passed away.
Mm.
Well, let's play tribute to a dog by playing a shoot 'em up.
That was one of your worst segues ever.
It was, but I don't know how you segue into first-person shooter otherwise. Other than say, it's a bit like Quake, but worse. It's like Doom, but worse. It's like Laser Quest, but less good.
One of the old reviews I read of this episode called it X-Files Does Doom.
Yeah, which I think is probably giving kind of a slight to Doom.
Possibly.
Okay, so this is, of course, first-person shooter. Directed by Chris Carter. Carter! And written by William Gibson and Tom Maddox. Oh, guys, what's wrong with you?
I do think every time you scream Chris Carter's name, we need that kind of little musical twing like in Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, I can see if I can do that for next time. Just the echoing.
That bit.
I mean, I could do that one too, but I was thinking of the actual musical sting, but that works.
Yeah.
Okay, try and start out for next time. First broadcast on the 27th of Feb, 2000. Guest stars. So the surprise was that Krista Allen, who plays Maitreya or Jade Blue Afterglow, we have seen in other things.
Oh, have we?
Yeah. So she's in Liar Liar. Very small role, but she's in there.
Okay.
She was in Paycheck, the Philip K. Dick film directed by John Woo of all people and starring Ben Affleck and Uma Thurman and Paul Giamatti, amongst others.
Okay, I don't think I've ever seen that one.
It's not great, and also apparently it was something that caused John Woo to not direct another American film for 20 years.
Wow.
But she was also in The Final Destination, which you have seen.
Definitely, yep.
Baywatch, which you probably haven't, but of course she's in Baywatch.
Baywatch, the series or the movie?
The series.
Okay.
Yeah,
no, I haven't
Pamela
watched the
Anderson,
movie.
David Hasselhoff.
I've only watched the movie, sorry.
David Hasselhoff, that didn't help because David Hasselhoff was in the film, and so was Pamela Anderson, the TV series. Yasmin Bleeth and all the rest of them. And Frasier.
Okay.
Constance Zimmer was Phoebe. She's been in Babylon 5, Seinfeld, and Pushing Daisies.
All right. So, do you want to give us a synopsis, or try to give us a synopsis of first-person shooter?
I will try. So, on level 1, what you find is that you're in a warehouse district fighting people on motorcycles. This is the gameplay.
You're just going to do a gameplay walkthrough
I could do a gameplay walkthrough. So, what you want to do is you stand at the emplacements and you shoot at the motorcyclists. And when you've killed them, the Nazi SS officers will start sniper on you from above. And level 3 is a Wild West.
No, that's level 2. Nobody's got past level 2.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a short walkthrough.
A short walkthrough.
Anyway.
I've just found out I've got something from Patreon. I was about to say, in the near future. No, that's the wrong thing. That's not the right synopsis. 3 men fitted with futuristic combat gear and automatic weapons enter the virtuality game first-person shooter. In a control room, Ivan and Phoebe, the game's programmers, are monitoring the player's vital signs. Only one of the player makes it to the second level of the violent game, contradicting later, but anyway, where he encounters a female character in a leather outfit. She introduces herself as Maitreya, stating, "This is my game." She then kills the player with a flintlock pistol. Mulder and Scully visit the headquarters in Inland Empire, California, where they meet with the lone gunmen who work as consultants for the game. They look at the body of the player, who clearly displays a gunshot wound. Ivan claims there is no way a real gun could have been brought into the highly secured building. The agents are shown a video from the game featuring the female character who killed the player. Mulder takes a printout of the character and shows it to a detective, as he believes she is the killer. Daryl Musashi, a famous computer hacker, arrives at the building and enters the game to kill Maitreya. However, the character, now dressed as a Japanese swordswoman, cuts off Musashi's head and hands with a large medieval sword. Mulder receives a call from the sheriff's department that a woman similar to the one in the printout has been picked up. The woman, a stripper named J. Blue Afterglow, tells the agents that she was paid by a medical imaging facility in Culver City, California, to scan her body. Mulder and Scully find out that lone gunmen have become trapped inside first-person shooter with someone trying to kill them. Mulder enters the game where he sees Maitreya dressed as a ninja and follows her. In the real world, Phoebe tearfully admits to Scully that the female warrior was created by her as a sort of personal estrogenic outlet in a testosterone-fueled environment. This is what the summary says. I'm not sure it's quite put like that. Maitreya was to be contained within Phoebe's personal separate project, but the character found her way into the first-person shooter program. The game is shut off, and Mulder is trapped inside the game, much to everyone's mystification. When the game starts up again, Scully manages to join Mulder in the game, and the two fight Maitreya together in a Wild West environment. Maitreya begins to duplicate herself, making the task of killing her more difficult. Finally, Maitreya sits atop a virtual tank and aims it at the agents. Phoebe admits there is one way to stop the game, but doing so will erase the entire program. Despite protests from Ivan, Phoebe gives Byers the kill command, effectively destroying Maitreya along with the game, while saving Mulder and Scully. During Mulder's final narration, we see that in the control room one of the monitors is still active. There, a delighted Ivan sees Maitreya's avatar, but with Scully's face.
Thank you, I think.
I've been debating since we watched this of whose fault is this? Because I know there are some notes about the development of it, but it's one of those. I can put a lot of blame on William Gibson and Tom Maddox, but I can put an awful lot of blame on Chris Carter as well.
I did read that the writing process for this was very long. They actually started writing it after they wrote Kill Switch, because it's gone through a lot of revisions and a lot of tweaks from like Kartner and Spotnitz to turn William Gibson's idea into an actual X-Files story.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, how much of this concept is now Gibson's, or if it's like the Chinga episode that Stephen King wrote, where very little of it is actually Stephen King stuff remaining.
Yeah. Given the other William Gibson stuff I've read over the years, the whole Maitreya thing doesn't feel like the kind of thing he'd pull. That's not how he tends to do these things.
Okay.
He's not. While he will have some nominal sexy ninja assassins, he doesn't tend to do this kind of thing. There isn't a lot of cheesecake in William Gibson stuff.
We've also tried to make a commentary very badly in this about the games industry being male-dominated, which is.
Yeah, we can't dispute that.
We can't dispute the fact that it is male-dominated, but not to this degree where essentially Phoebe's tried to make her own feminist character go into this world, but this is very much the male gaze idea of how women write characters.
Yeah.
I think I'd use the argument, a lot of the big female characters that are very famous. I think at the time this was written, our big female archetype would be Lara Croft.
Yes.
Who, again, was written by a man.
Yeah, and designed.
These days, we get a lot more sensitive stuff that's kind of more aimed at a female gaze. I'm going to give props in particular to the Life is Strange series. Something like that, which is more, it's still a sci-fi story, it's got murders, it's quite dark, but it's all focused largely, at least Life is Strange and Life is Strange Two Colours, on a young female character who has female issues and relationships and things like that. This is more a female character written by women.
Yes. And before anyone brings it up, yes, we know Bayonetta was designed by a woman. She was working to a brief. As much as a lot of people are now taken to Bayonetta, and she's a lot more accepted than Lara Croft. Even Lara Croft's been recovered anyway.
I'm saying at the time this was written, This is PlayStation era Lara Croft.
Yes.
This isn't Lara Croft revamped as we've had in recent years.
I don't know, but Lara Croft revamped has a lot of daddy issues, which gets quite tedious after a while.
But we are, bear in mind, if you look at Lara Croft, she is the strong female character, like the female equivalent of Indiana Jones, but also look at her character design. Because we're in PlayStation era here, where she has giant cones for breasts.
To be fair, this is kind of more reminiscent of like some of the fighting games. Maitreya has a kind of Soul Calibur feel to her.
Yeah, definitely a kind of that sort of fighting game sort of look.
Venom, poison, something deadly-ish. But I don't know. I've never played Soul Calibur.
Are you thinking Ivy?
I'm possibly thinking Ivy.
She's the one who kind of wears the bondage gear with the whip.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
She's kind of very much that kind of era kind of design there.
Yeah. But of course, our graphics we're supposed to believe in FPS are infinitely better to what technology was at the time.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I'll give them that you can bend it two ways, is that if this was a actual first-person shooter experience, and yes, this is way beyond anything that was plausible. FMV games, though, this kind of looks like an FMV game.
Yes, it does look like an FMV game. But this is supposed to be virtual reality. We don't have this level of virtual reality.
No. Well, I mean, I think I'm trying to remember how much Alison Pregley got into this, because she did a video on first-person shooter and just, the baffling weirdness of it. But it's things like when you see them in the game and then you see the space they've got to play the game in. And that's a much smaller room they're apparently running around in.
Yeah.
Which doesn't have steps down to a car park, which at least 3 people have gone down those steps in the game, and I don't understand how they're going down steps in a flat room.
It also, admittedly, I've said before, technology isn't my thing, but you have things like where he runs off the beaten track and they say, no, that area hasn't been mapped.
Yeah.
What is this?
To be fair to William Gibson to a point, there's a story I only read recently, which was, I always knew he famously didn't have a computer for a long time. When he wrote Neuromancer...
Oh, on a typewriter.
He wrote it on a typewriter.
Yeah.
But recently I saw another anecdote from him, and he was saying that when he wrote Neuromancer, he was envisaging everything he thought a computer could do because it was this mysterious thing to him. He thought it would have it would be running off some kind of crystal inside, which, in a weird way, he was kind of right.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, because crystal clocks were a thing in that kind of era, but he wasn't prepared for the realities of hard disks and motherboards and things. He thought it was something a lot more exotic and magical, and was disappointed when he got a computer.
So you're going down the Arthur C. Clarke approach of, if technology looks advanced, it seems like magic.
Yes. But I mean, I also remember an anecdote from Amiga Power, of all things, the computer magazine, which made a point that William Gibson eventually sort of started to try and understand and know the technology he'd been name-dropping for years. And consequently, like Douglas Adams, would never write anything quite so funny again, because if you understand it, you don't make these bizarre statements that don't have any basis in reality.
Yeah.
Quite how first-person shooter happened, I don't understand, though. Because this is also an episode written by someone who knows people play Doom, and maybe Quake, but mostly Doom, but they've never actually played Doom. I don't think they've even seen someone play Doom, they've just heard about it.
I guess you've got, with them fighting the kind of cyberpunk Nazis, this sort of Wolfenstein sort of feel there.
Yeah, but it's someone who hasn't actually played the game, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, very much.
How they're presenting it on screen has nothing to do with the effect of actually playing Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake, whatever.
You definitely had a feel of Quake there in particular with the kind of Musashi character.
Yeah.
This guy who's the famous gamer that they've brought in.
Well, I would say it's not in the notes, but I would be surprised if that's not meant to be Dennis Fong, who was the first kind of real-world esports person. Because he won a Quake.
Quake was one of the first esports.
Yeah, he was the first one to actually get it, because he won the first big tournament, won John Carmack's Ferrari.
Yep.
And he played under the name of Thresh.
Yeah.
But as I say, the way Daryl Musashi, he's the right kind of ethnicity, the right kind of time period. But that's a weird specific detail if you've got the look of the game wrong, because it's like Laser Quest is what first-person shooter actually is.
You've got the bizarrity to it. For some reason, they're all wearing full Kevlar body armor, which seems surreal. But also, they've got this kind of force feedback thing. So the idea is, if you get hit, it runs an electric shock through you and paralyzes you, so you can't continue playing. Which I'd like to see the health and safety reports for running low-level electrical current through the players, to be honest, first. But also the fact that that's kind of miserable in a game, having no respawn, no, just putting you out for a certain amount of time and letting you come back into the game. One shot and you are out of this play. It's no wonder no one's got past level 2.
Well, yeah. I mean, the two things occurred to me there with other virtual games you could point to there. One is, I wonder if this was bought from Starship Troopers, because when they're doing the training camp, I think they're electrocuted and when they're hit and forced to stay down, aren't they? The other one, of course, is Sword Art Online, which is how did you get this product onto the market when it will, kill people?
It should be noted this is before Sword Art Online.
This was, I know, but it makes me think of it, of I don't understand how you put this out. How did this get mass produced with a fatal flaw?
I want to criticise this game in my experience as a streamer as well, because, I'm a gamer, that's my thing. I like difficult games. I like the likes of From Software's Dark Souls and things like that. The games that people notoriously hold a candle up and say they're really hard to play. I've gone on length on my stream and my blog talking about why I don't believe this is the case, but I'll leave that for now. But at the same time, as these games are difficult, you have single bosses in them that can take you hours, if not days, to learn how to defeat, because there are patterns and methods you've got to learn to do them. But at the same time, you can beat them.
Yes.
So, as a gamer, I think most gamers would agree, if you have a game where literally no one, including the creators, don't seem to know what's past Chapter 2, because nobody can get past Part 2 of the game, everyone would get bored of it so quick, it would flop.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that gets me is it's very much an old style, we have no cohesive theme to our game. We start with ninjas on motorbikes. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Nazis sniping you from up above. Bit weird. We're going to leave Maitreya. We'll come back to Maitreya in a minute because I think Maitreya's her whole thing. So we'll leave her to the side. But then we have Wild Western tanks, and you go, what's going on?
Well, it just seems to be standard Wild West at first, because you have the baddies in the white hats, the goodies in the white hats, then the baddies in the black hats. Then they're on tanks.
Yeah, and you go, what? Who?
So you've got to believe... you say ninjas on motorcycles. I thought we had kind of a cyberpunk sort of feel to the start, which makes sense because it's Tom Maddox as well, and he's kind of integral to the cyberpunk movement.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, an actual cyberpunk story wouldn't be too bad, but I think... I'm wondering if it's Chris Carter's fault this is one episode mangled rather than William Gibson. Because William Gibson at least knows what he's doing, based on the other books. I mean,
Kill Switch.
I mean, admittedly as well, I will never forget the middle trilogy he did, because he's written 3 trilogies to date, which is the Neuromancer one, there is the bridge novels, and then there's the fashion stuff. The fashion stuff's really weird, actually, the most recent ones.
I have never read any of his work.
The middle one, though, was kind of like a near future but semi-plausible, but he had this thing about websites. So you access a website through virtual reality, of course you do, it's cyberpunk. But you have to walk down a corridor to a curtained room and pull open the curtains and step through to get into the website. And most people went, from a usability and practical mindset, you'd be screaming, saying, oh my god, I don't want to do this every time I want to go and look up something on Wikipedia. For God's sake, turn this bit off. Give me a flat page.
The skip button.
Yeah, I want to skip button, I want a flat page. In fact, put it on the screen. I can just look at the screen and just type into it and not have to wave my hands around. Like in Minority Report. I still feel, though, what the thing they're actually replicating on screen is less first-person shooter, it's less even like a shooting gallery, it's more like Laser Quest, but the worst Laser Quest setup you've ever done. Oh, Quasar. Quasar's actually the more familiar one. But anything where you strap on the sensors and you run around with the laser gun, shoot at other people. I've never
done Quasar, but the equivalent we had, which I think was Laser Quest in my hometown,
yeah,
you essentially have a breastplate with a sensor on the front and back,
yeah,
and you get more points if you hit the person in the front.
Yeah.
That sort of idea, and then you run around with like a little rifle that, blasts them with a little laser.
It's all deathmatch first-person shooter, but you do it actually in real life, and you've got obstacles to run around on. You're not meant to run, you're meant to walk speed, but...
We ran.
Everyone runs. And you duck behind things.
But you've got like bridges you can run across and things you can hide under and that sort of stuff.
And there's pulsing music and smoke machines going off everywhere, and it's...
Everything's glow in the dark.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun. But that's basically what the game they have in first-person shooter is. We should also possibly... We're going to save her for last, because I think she's just a can of worms, basically. We're going to get to her in a minute. But first off, I think you noted that the Lone Gunmen shouldn't be in this episode, really.
Apparently, Gibson and Maddox, of course, are huge fans of the Lone Gunmen, and they wanted to write an episode they could be in. That's why they're here.
Yeah, but it's you lot have never expressed any interest in video games once.
I think your closest is that Langley plays D&D, and of course, a lot of people who play tabletop games also play video games, but that's about the closest we can get. Certainly, Freehickey and Byers have never shown any interest.
No. And then to find out they're not consultants, they're also shareholders, or they've got stock options for this. But it's really odd to see them in this capacity and having funded this game, and then that's why Mulder and Scully get involved. And why?
Because there seems to be no kind of regulation on this game as well, that they've got this groundbreaking first-person technology. Someone has died essentially while beta testing it, and it's still going to ship the following week or whatever. There's no board testing this.
No. Well, they sort of said it's going to be sort of shipped tomorrow or something in malls up and down America. And you also want to say is, have you seen your warehouse space? That's a lot of more real estate you have to sort of carve out to put this thing into.
I've got to assume this is something, it's not going to have a home release. This is going to be purely played in, like, big areas.
Well, you'd imagine so. I mean, given the fact that we have home VR is now a thing. in a way that it wasn't in this point in time. This point in time, you could theoretically have home VR. It'd cost you an absolute fortune. You'd be in that little cage thing you have to stand in.
Oh, when they kind of stand inside the ring.
Yeah, it's like if you've seen Hackers, he's got one of those in his apartment. You'd hate that was a plausible thing. These days, we've got the likes of whatever
Oculus.
Steam's was, Oculus and Steam's one. And in general, VR has advanced a bit though, so that people don't run around. You have to basically stand or sit still while doing it, and you can't walk in the virtual environment without causing yourself severe problems.
It doesn't work like you see it in, like, Star Trek or something like that either as well. It's not, you are transported to this world, you know, my now alien hands in front of my face sort of technology.
More the holodeck would be what you're asking for. But yeah, we don't, or the Matrix, and I think you can't sort of be rendered comatose basically while your brain goes off and has adventures. Sword Art Online, again, we can never get away from that bloody series.
Your opinions towards Sword Art Online have been noted.
I'll remind everyone of your opinions on Sword Art Online, especially you got the 3/4 mark where you just started swearing a lot.
Yeah, you don't let me swear on this show, so I can't repeat the things, my opinions on Sword Art Online.
Lone Gunman. So they're involved in doing all the programming and helping out with things. And I think, as you pointed out, it's one of these whole do not understand computers with the whole, why can't you pull the plug out of the wall to turn the game off, given that without power it can't do much. I know Mulder is strapped inside the game, and come to that in a minute, because that's a whole other headache.
The Matrix has him.
The Matrix has him, there's so many headaches. But it's still the whole, they keep saying, oh, we can only shut off the program by entering the kill command. It's like, but you can't pull the plug out the wall. Also, okay, so the kill command will kill the game and erase the code. Fine. Most people have the code elsewhere. Like, you have a backup disk, you have several backup disks, you put it in a fireproof box on a different site so that if your building burns down, you still have it. You also don't generally put the development code on the same server that you have the thing running on, because that's also stupid.
I've got to assume that all of these malls that we're shipping to are also running off the same server on this basis.
Yeah, so there's no, then they say it's shipping out tomorrow. Apparently, there's no duplication happened.
Everything is running from the central hub all the time.
Yeah, and that's
at this point in history.
Yeah, it's like, Mr. Gibson, you might want to check up on programming a little bit before you write these things.
I love the high level of security they had on site as well, where Mulder and Scully had to go through more ID and kind of retinal checks than they do getting into the Pentagon to get in there.
Yes.
And sign the NDAs and stuff like that.
And Scully even comments on that. It says, Mulder has broken into the Pentagon with less effort than it takes to get into this place. And, he literally has. That's the maddening thing about it. And just visited the Pentagon properly on the other Invisible Assassin episode.
Yeah.
Is that Unforgiven?
It's unsomething.
Unrequited.
Unrequited.
Yeah. He literally went to the Pentagon in that one. Yeah, I mean, and we have to talk about Maitreya, aren't we?
You've been putting it off for a long time now.
I
had her down as Altreya in my notes.
I had it down as Altreya, but on the thing she's listed as
Maitreya, yeah.
So, to start in possibly the most related to the programming thing of one of the kind of nuisance things about this episode, and it's the kind of thing where you might be able to forgive it in other circumstances, but I feel in this kind of show you kind of have to explain it of, okay, so we're going to get away from the whole, we've done character design, and there's some problems with how it's been done, but we're going to have to accept that that's what she looks like, and that Phoebe has created her based on a scan that this stripper has done for a medical imaging place. Not going to get into that one either. And then she somehow jumped programs.
Yeah.
Like, do you understand what you just said?
So, her origins as well are purely because Phoebe was sick on working on these kind of hyper-realistic, male testosterone-driven wet dreams, essentially. So she's made her own kick-ass female character who essentially is a male-gaze, testosterone-driven wet dream.
Yes. My understanding sort of peters out a bit. It's a case of, okay, yes, I can see what you're doing, and no, you've lost me. What? But it feels like a bit of script missing of, were you working on an AI project and the AI got melded with the model and that's how she jumped ship into the other game? But
I mean, who really understands Wi-Fi?
It's not just Wi-Fi. But it's the kind of thing, though, because, you could buy in Ghost in the Machine, that's an AI that started doing things. You don't really need to say, I don't believe this, and operating system can develop itself into AI. That's the conceit of the episode. That's fine.
We commented on the time. It's basically a like Ghost in the Shell kind of AI.
It's arisen from nowhere. We don't understand how it happened, but that's the basis of the story. That's fine. In this, I've created a character model for a separate game, and she has just walked into my other game somehow.
But there's no indication she is an AI, that she's...
No.
They can't talk to her and reason with her. She doesn't seem to be sentient. She is a computer program.
And that's what feels like, I don't know, was something edited out with an axe or something? Because it feels like that if Phoebe on the side had been messing with AI and had used the character model as a basis for a first generation of something, and then, had opened both projects on her computer or something, and that's how she jumped across, I wouldn't say a word. That's fine. That's stupid, but it works.
I'd even buy, Phoebe hadn't designed Maitreya as a character. Maitreya was an AI.
Yeah.
It has gone to the game and it's created itself in this kind of male fighting game form.
Yeah.
Because it fits into that world.
Yeah. Or it found the medical image data that she had for whatever reason and said, okay, this will work as a basis. I'll go and do that. Yeah. And I think it comes down to it. Like, there's a handful of lines that they could have included that would have just resolved the issue, and it's really odd they're not there. Instead we get the whole, you have no idea what it's like to be in a testosterone involved environment, and it's Phoebe, law enforcement has the same kind of problems as video game development. I don't understand why you don't think Scully knows exactly what you're going through.
In fairness, even to this day, a lot of occupations are technically male dominated.
It's true.
Because, not 50 years ago, women were expected to be at home all the time.
Yeah. So it's just an odd thing for her to throw out. Like, is she that naive? But if she's that naive, then how has she done this? I don't understand.
Yeah. But then you also get the Jade Blue Afterglow scene, the basic instinct scene, we will call it.
And it definitely is meant to invoke that, because there's no reason you'd have a police interrogation scene with her very slowly and deliberately uncrossing her legs in front of Mulder.
There is a line I often use, which, in fairness, is taken from the TV show Community, which is "Man is evil."
Yes.
Which you've got here with all the male cops kind of catcalling and hollering and commenting on the fact that they'd read her Miranda rights 900 times or something.
And the biting the knuckle thing and everything else.
Yeah.
And, well, for the first time for a while, we can say, hey, Scholarshipers, we know you hate this episode.
Yeah.
We know you really hate this episode.
It's one thing I've seen shared around on Twitter a lot for a while, is there is particularly one bit where the stripper leaves the room and Mulder's gaze follows her at ass level, basically. And fans hate it. The fact that he will ogle her openly like that with Scully stood looking at him. Yeah.
I mean, we can also say we're going to have to put some blame onto Chris Carter here, given the camera follows her ass and every sachet she makes out of that room.
Not to mention, before we even get her standing up, she does, why we call it the basic instinct screen.
Oh, it's
numerous things of her crossing and uncrossing her legs.
There's no particular reason why you'd have that scene unless you're trying to invoke basic instinct, which is very famous by that point in time. But yeah, so she's doing that to Mulder. It feels really awful because part of it is she gives them the vital clue that she was scanned, and she was scanned by this medical corporation. And then Scully makes an intuitive leap. Does they actually know they're even the same company, or does she just make a leap that she thinks Ivan did this?
Yeah. Which is the more obvious answer, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. But does she fall into the sexy lamp trap, basically, where...
What's the sexy lamp test?
If the information that a female character gives to the male lead could be imparted by having a seductively shaped lamp with a post-it attached to it with said clue on it.
I see. So it's when you have the femme fatale who exists only to deliver one simple piece of information.
To be fair, the femme fatale is usually the person who has a detective. This is kind of like the person who sleeps with partway through.
Okay.
And it's the excuse to have the sex scene so the man can talk about his problems.
Yeah.
And the woman can impart the one vital clue. But then it's if you can replace her with a moderately attractive lamp with a post-it note.
Right.
That's failing the sexy lamp test.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Jade Blue Afterglow does fall screaming into the sexy lamp test failure.
It is the only time that Jade Blue Afterglow appears in the episode. Because any other appearance from that actress is Maitreya.
Yes. And it feels like it's an excuse to put her into a different provocative outfit and then do... She's doing her best kind of third-wave feminism thing. At the same time, it's one of those, but this is third-wave feminism by a male writer rather than from a sex worker point of view of why she's doing this. This is, I'm just happy doing whatever I'm paid to do. I think seems to be her entire gist.
She doesn't have any kind of higher level emotion, basically.
Yeah.
Because it's even when they're saying, we've got you here because we have evidence you murdered somebody, she does not bat an eyelid.
Yeah, most people would say, but I've got alibis or something, or I was never, did I do this alleged murder? I've never been to this building or this part of town or something.
I can evidence I was at X place at this time.
Yeah.
But, she just oozes this kind of male-written female confidence.
She's just as sultry and pouty, and that's her entire mindset for the entire time she's on screen. The other thing that got me about it is the throwaway line of "we picked her up outside a strip club," and you want to go, sorry, when Mulder handed you this printout of a video game character, you actually distributed that to the various officers, or did an officer that works in your precinct frequent the strip club and go, crap, I know exactly who that is?
I like the phrasing of "we picked her up outside a strip club" as well, not "she is a stripper."
Yeah, because there's meant to be an ambiguity there of, is she just a sex worker who sleeps with people, or is she just a stripper? The other point, though, is on occasions I've had to go out and buy things late at night, and I've seen the people outside the strip clubs, the various actual strippers, basically they're wearing really thick coats and just sort of like huddling around the flame things outside the places where they're smoking.
I like the fact that you specialise that you happen to go out at night and saw them there.
When I've had to go to Tesco at like 10 to 10. What? When do I go in the evening? Without you? When? Do I?
No, I just like the way you worded that.
I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this in the most diplomatic way I can. Anyway, but the whole point is that if you pick her up outside a strip club, generally they're wearing more clothes than she is because, that's
cold.
Sorry?
It's cold outside.
It's cold, and also that's what they want you to come into the strip club to pay to see. In fact, she's just sat there in this absurd dress.
Essentially dressed in masking tape.
Yeah. It's like, what's going on? But anyway, Betrayer herself, though, the actual video game character, some of her outfits are okay, and then some of it are, cheesecake garbage.
She's got the one with a hood that looks a bit like a suit of armour that at least covers all of her body.
Yeah, it's not like the thong leotard thing she's got when she's wielding a flintlock pistol. Why is it so disconnected in terms of weaponry?
I was thinking that when she faces Daryl Musashi as well, is she speaks Japanese over him and things like that. You think that she'd be dressed in like samurai armour and holding a katana.
Yeah, but it's a broadsword.
And wearing kind of a very westernised suit of armour as well when she's doing it.
And could we linger on the broadsword a minute? Because that broadsword, I feel, caused a lot of problems.
It's like a claymore sort of sword.
It is, but follow this logic through. Okay, so she has that when Mulder first sees her.
Yeah.
He tries to shoot at her, she does her bold black flippy thing and disappears into the sword.
Yeah.
Comes from behind him, tries to kill him with the sword, misses, hits the pillar.
Yeah.
That is a virtual object. Mulder then picks that sword out of the pillar, carries it to the door and tries to lever it open with it.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on?
Good point, actually.
That's maddeningly stupid. And then we have to try and get into the Matrix Hazu, which Matrix came out 1 year before this, so I can see that having an influence.
The Matrix influenced everything when it came out as well.
Biffy's been writing since Kill Switch. This technically predates the Matrix. But the idea of being trapped inside a game, generally you have it so the person's body is trapped and their mind is elsewhere, because doing it any other way, people start asking questions. And for this episode, we have to say, you've turned the game off and Mulder's now inside the game. You've invented teleportation. We would kind of want you to stop doing the video game development. You've created something
military grade,
something that can change transport, and wow, the implications of this, nobody's going to wipe it out.
It doesn't make it feel very X-Files either, because although X-Files has weird supernatural and alien things in there, it's normally very grounded on reality.
Yeah.
So I could buy that Mulder had a spiritual journey somewhere, his mind went somewhere. His entire body vanishing into cyberspace like that just doesn't feel right. No,
and I'd say that's one of the other problems is there's never an explanation for why any of this is happening. Like we said before about how Betrayer got into first-person shooter, we don't understand how that happened. The episode doesn't care. And we don't understand how he got trapped in the video game code other than that's just what happened. But usually in other episodes, there's a reason for things to happen. Again, we have to go back to Ghost in the Shell is the operating system became sentient.
Ghost in the Machine.
Ghost Machine. That's fine. And in Kill Switch, it was, we've created this AI that we've lost control of. It's gibberish, but it works fine as an idea.
What you're hinging on here is like Digimon level logic.
Yeah.
Where kids can go into the virtual world where, the world that computers works from is another physical plane.
Yeah. And Digimon then has that consistently for its world building. That is a thing that happens.
It's also, I know it's kind of a series that's grown with its viewers and become more mature, but originally it was a concept for 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
And as a 10-year-old, you can buy that the computer world is real. The X-Files is not aimed at 10-year-olds.
No, well, I mean, we could go earlier. We've got Captain N, the Game Master, which also had Guy getting sucked into his Nintendo.
Yeah.
And it's these days you'd say basically, these are isekais. This is just an isekai concept.
Well, ditto in the old days. At the time this came out, things like Monster Rancher as well.
Yeah.
Kid gets sucked into PlayStation.
Yeah. So we're not opposed to the concept. I think the problem is, if that's your series, we just appreciate that's something that happens in that world. In the X-Files, you're now saying that this could have happened in the previous 7 seasons.
Yeah, like you said, in Isekai, that will be the concept from the start. Our hapless protagonist will be sucked into the Isekai world in episode 1.
Yeah.
Not in episode, 12, 13 of season 7?
Yeah. So this didn't happen. Why didn't it happen in Kill Switch? I mean, surely that would have made things a lot easier if she could just.
Well, in that one, it kind of was, but they were uploading their brains into it. So again, it's the consciousness as a separate thing leaving.
Yes.
You've got that idea of dualism, it's not the flesh sack.
Yeah, and if you want a much bleaker view of this, the game Soma gets into this quite a lot, and how this kind of, what the drawbacks and shortcomings of doing this are.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I figured you haven't played Soma, so I won't say anything else. This is the.
I think I have it on my pile. We'll get to that.
It's from the Amnesia people, but it is. I made it through this one. One of the things you can do though is you can turn the enemies off.
Okay.
So it's still actually really creepy. I still got freaked out quite a lot in it, but you can get through it a lot easier than you can Amnesia. Where if you do that, you can also turn the enemies off in Amnesia. You have to fiddle with some settings, and it will break the game if you don't turn them back on at a certain point, because something needs to happen to you.
Do you know the Amnesia people have just announced another one as well that sounds
Wouldn't
terrifying?
surprise me. What's this one?
It's a man stuck in a storm on an offshore rig that's slowly going down, but there's something else on there with him.
Yeah, that sounds like them. Yeah, no, that's very like them. I need to go and play Penumbra. Anyway, well, off track. Better video games. Play that instead of first-person shooter. I saw in one review somewhere where basically they said the other thing that kind of points to people not having any experience with first-person shooters, Doom clones, Quake clones, or whatever at the time, Half-Life existed at this point in time. So, there was a lot of other stuff, Daikatana and System Shock 2. There were a whole load of
Time Splitters.
Time Splitters. There were a lot of first-person shooters around this point, and they made one that looks worse than Wolfenstein. But anyway, the point was made, though, that you've called your game and your company first-person shooter. So literally the genre name. And everyone will go and say, that's terrible. That doesn't tell me anything about the game. Not that the game looks very good anyway, because it's the ninjas, the SS officers, and the cowboys and tanks. And there's nothing else after that.
Just because no one's got past that. In which case you have to assume that guy's just frantically programming in real time if they make it.
Well, you're going to go about, playtesting everything. Like, the only game I can think of I've played where something genuinely wasn't playtested was Psychonauts.
Okay.
Because the Meat Circus at the end of the game was actually shipped untested.
I'm not surprised, having played the original Meat
It has
Circus.
now been patched, so it's a lot easier than it used to be. But yeah, I played the unmodified. God, this is actually really difficult. You can do it. It's not simple, quick, or easy to do it.
Yeah, I played the original version of the Meat Circus, and it is verging on impossible. Yeah. It's doable, but it's horrendous when compared to the rest of the game.
Yeah, and it infamously wasn't tested before it went out.
Yeah, that explains a lot, to be honest.
It does. And Yumi and a few other people suffered through it. And the equivalent thing, though, you have to say, Psychonauts 2, there's nothing on that level of infuriation, is there?
It's even if you come back to Psychonauts these days, now we've got the patched version of it. The Meat Circus, I didn't realise the difference. When I replayed it again as an adult, I was thinking, why did I struggle with this the first time? Because I played it in its original incarnation.
Yeah, before it was fixed up. Do we have anything else for this, kind of lousy game that also, and I've got to say this, references the right stuff at the end for some reason?
Does it?
Well, I've never seen the right stuff, but there's a famous shot, which is the slow motion shot of them all walking towards the camera. And that's how this episode ends.
Okay.
But that's from the right stuff.
Okay.
I don't know why it's here.
There are a few points in this one. One is that it's critically reviled. People hate this episode. It's considered one of the worst episodes of all time. But it is often lampooned as being one of the X-Files, if not the worst episode of them all. But Gillian Anderson loved it.
I know, I saw that, and
She really enjoyed the opportunity to be running around in armour with a big gun, shooting things, being the big hero like that. Which I can see, when you've got used to playing a certain kind of character, that must have some sort of appeal.
Yeah. I mean, could we also get her take on her 3D model at the end there? Because that's not exactly flattering.
No.
I know that's possibly the best they could do at the time, but that looks really bad. Really unflatteringly bad.
Mm. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that this reviled episode is the one she had fun working on.
That's all good. Well, I think there's an anecdote about a lot of film productions in that if your film crew suffer and think it's going to be absolute garbage, the film will end up fine. This infamously with Star Wars, where everyone thought the entire length of the film, this is going to sink everyone. No one's getting out of this in one piece. We're all going to lose our jobs and our careers.
With the X-Files as well, this was another episode that almost rinsed their budget because there is so much special effects in first-person shooter that it cost a fortune because, this was literally the best they could do at the time with all their budget. It still looks pretty dreadful, and I seem to remember it looked pretty dreadful even at the time, but appreciate the budget for a TV show is not the budget of a Hollywood movie.
No, but at the same time, you have to say, why do you keep getting William Gibson in to do this?
I think this is the last one.
It is the last one, but it's still... He wrote cyberpunk stuff, and that was set, middle of the next century with impossible technology we don't have. Why do you get him in to write the X-Files? I mean, Stephen King makes more sense, even though you didn't let him actually write the X-Files for some reason. You just kind of took his thing and then mangled it a bit.
I get the impression with the mangling, just because you're a good writer doesn't mean you can write something in the tone of the X-Files.
Yeah.
And they want that kind of credit of having the big names like William Gibson and Stephen King, but have to mangle it so far to actually make the characters fit in that it's no longer their work.
Why bother this other than the cultural cachet of saying William Gibson wrote an episode?
Mm.
Oh well, do you have anything else, or should we go to Louisiana? Or not really Louisiana.
It's California.
It's California. So, Teeth, directed by Kim Manners, written by John Gilnitz, being Vince Gilligan, John Shaban, and Frank Spotnitz. Do I need this musical sting for Shaban as well? That should be the Wrath of Khan one or a different one? First broadcast on 12th of March 2000. Guest stars Billy Drago as Oral Petey, who you've seen in Tremors 4.
I have indeed.
And he's also big in Charmed, I understand.
Yes, he is a character in Charms, that's correct.
But we also have James Morrison, who played Dr. Robert Wider, who was in Falling Down. Frasier, who's going to show up in Millennium. He's in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Twin Peaks The Revival, and Space Above and Beyond. Oh, you poor man. There's also Kate McNeil, who played Nan Wider, who was in Babylon 5, Star Trek Enterprise, and Veronica Mars. But the weird one is Dylan Kussman, who played the medical student, who is the guy who was watching Mr. Petey get popcorn.
Okay.
He was in X-Men 2.
Okay.
He was in House, but he's responsible for The Mummy, the Tom Cruise one.
Oh no.
He wrote it.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I'm gonna note as well, because I know you only pick up on things you've actually seen, but Billy Drago is a bigger actor than you've said.
Yes, he was in loads of stuff, but not stuff we've actually seen.
He usually plays villains. His biggest ones were Pale Rider, which is a Clint Eastwood one, and The Untouchables, which I think is Brian De Palma.
Yeah, that's Kevin Costner and Sean Connery.
Yeah, but they're his bigger ones. I think he's particularly well known for his villain in The Untouchables.
Ah, okay. Would you like to tell us who stole what, where, how, and when?
Who the thief was.
Who the thief was. We know who the thief was.
I shall. As usual, this is vaguely ad-libbed from Wikipedia. Okay, our episode opens following Dr. Robert Vida receiving an award for Physician of the Year. His family return home for the evening, including his father-in-law, Dr. Irving Thalbro, who has decided to stay with them for the night. In the middle of the night, Dr. Thalbro goes to bed and finds a pile of dirt under the covers, which is vaguely in the shape of a person. At the same time, a stranger appears in the room behind him. Later that night, the intruder alarm is tripped and Robert goes downstairs to find Irvin hanging from his neck from the ceiling. His throat has been slit and the word thief, spelt Theef, has been painted in his blood behind him. Mulder and Scully arrive the following morning to investigate, although Scully does not believe it to be an X-File. Mulder points out the dirt, later revealed to be graveyard dirt, in Irvin's bed, and explains that he believes it's caused by some kind of hoodoo hex. Scully, however, believes that it would make more sense that the Doctor committed suicide by slitting his own throat, writing it on the wall, and hanging himself, although it's questioned how he could have done all three without assistance. Scully's theory is proven correct after the autopsy, which shows that he was suffering from a late stage of kuru, a prion disease which is always fatal, attacks the brain, and causes psychotic behaviour. Mulder, however, believes that the Dr. Irvin, who was not showing any previous signs of kuru, was given the disease by a hex which caused him to go instantly insane. Meanwhile, at the Widers' home, Robert's wife finds that one of their family photos are missing. We cut to the man who we previously saw in Irvin's bedroom, who we later learn is called Oral Petey. He is creating a poppet, so a little cloth doll often used in folk witchcraft, which he has cut out faces from the photo and is tucking them inside. Shortly after, we see Robert's wife collapse, lesions instantly opening on her face, after Robert found another pile of graveyard dirt in her bed. As Robert's wife is taken to hospital, she's proven to still be okay, but suffering from a rare parasitic disease which is only really found in Africa. Oral Petey visits Dr. Wader at work. He refuses to tell him why he's committing these hexes. It is now quite obviously hexes, as the word thief has also shown up on Robert's wife's MRI scans. However, he does indicate the fact that Robert has wronged his family in some way, which is why he is committing these hexes as a form of revenge. Robert does some research, unable to find anything in the name of Lynette Petey, the name that Oral Petey gives him, but does find a case that he worked on 2 years previously of a Jane Doe. On her case file there is a bracelet which contains the phrase "thief of my heart" with the same misspelling of the word thief. Meanwhile, Mulder consults an expert in the occult who explains to him about how hexes are created, explaining that the man must have some kind of charm that he's drawing power from, and is placing a combination of blood, hair, and a picture of the victim inside the poppets in order to bind them to follow through the hexes when he casts his spells on them. Robert's wife is sent for another MRI scan, however we see Petey at the same time microwaving her poppet. She inexplicably bursts into flames inside the MRI, which is unfortunately fatal. When investigating the body, the word "thief" is branded in her chest. Robert explains about the Jane Doe case to Mulder and Scully, who we have to assume is Lynette Petey, daughter of Oral Petey. She died during a bus crash in which she was inflicted with injuries that would invariably kill her. Because she was in such pain and they were so overworked at the time, Robert made the decision to give her a fatal dose of morphine, which euthanized her, but in his own words, only cost her the last 20 minutes of her life anyway, just to remove her pain. Although Robert believed he was doing the right thing, Mulder states that Oral is clearly her father, and feels that Robert actually stole his family away from him. Mulder decides to exhume Lynette's body to take away her father's power, but when he does so, they discover that the casket is empty. Meanwhile, Petey's landlady, who we previously saw he makes poultices for her to cure a bad back, sneaks into his apartment to try and find more pain medication. She finds Lynette's incredibly decomposed body inside his bed. A short time later, we see Mulder watching a news article which reveals that the landlady, having been caught by Petey, suddenly contracted a rare flesh-eating virus. This incident of another rare disease puts Mulder onto where Petey is, and he goes to the apartment only to find that Lynette's body is now headless. In the meantime, Scully goes on the wrong with the two surviving family members, Robert and his daughter. Oral Petey tracks them down and sees that Scully is protecting them, so makes a poppet with Scully's hair and a photo he gets from her car. He drives nails into the doll's eyes and Scully immediately goes blind. Using Scully's confusion to his advantage, Petey breaks into the house and takes Scully's gun. He stabs a poppet of Wider in the heart, causing the doctor to collapse in pain in front of his distraught daughter. Robert shouts at Petey, trying to get him to admit that he's taking out his own guilt on the doctor because Petey was not there to save Lynette himself. Mulder shows up at the critical moment, finding Scully's doll and pulling the nails from its eyes, causing her to regain her vision. He also shoots Petey in the back. We see at the end of the episode that Petey is now in a coma and Lynette's body is shipped back to her home in West Virginia to finally be with her people, as her father believed it should be. At the close of the episode, Scully has a crisis of confidence, talking to Mulder about how if she had been in Robert's place, she would have also given Lynette an overdose.
Yeah, cool. I think there's a possible interesting angle to the episode that they didn't really take, which seems odd to me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's during that final confrontation when he's sort of stabbing the doctor in the heart, or stabbing the puppet in the heart.
Yeah.
And there's some mention of, she's so Lynette was so far from home at the time, and the doctor hits back with, "You weren't there to help save her. I did what I could."
Yeah.
There's an unspoken possibility that the episode to get into of, did she run from her father?
It could be. Given
that he's trying to stop her getting a polio vaccination, is the one documented case that Scully can find.
Yeah.
And it's given that he feels so responsible for her death, or is lashing out so much, did she give up on whatever life she had with him? And we've got the impression that this is very old world.
It's one of the big criticisms of the episode is that Oral Petey is a very bad stereotype of this kind of hillbilly cliche that you have in America.
Yeah.
It says frequently that he's an Appalachian man, just to hammer home to you that he is kind of what I think it's what you... I'm bad with American subcultures, but I think it's what you call a hillbilly. It's like your hills have eyes sort of characterization.
Yeah, well, I was going to say Appalachian makes you think of the last Wrong Turn film, certainly.
That was definitely in the Catskill Mountains. Yeah, I believe the Appalachian Trail runs all the way from the Catskills down to about Mississippi, if I remember right. So it's quite a big region.
But it also makes me think of Descent, which has got nothing to do with this at all. That was also the Appalachian Mountains.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, despite being filmed in Scotland.
Yeah, I just assumed it was set in Scotland.
No, it's the Appalachian Trail. It's filmed in Scotland, but it's set in the Appalachians. Which I don't know why.
I believe it was actually one of Billy Drago's other films, actually. I'm pretty sure he was the patriarch in the Hills Have Eyes remake.
Oh, okay.
So he evidently has this kind of playing the hillbilly sort of thing down.
I mean, he's very good and very menacing, and you can, as a twisted revenge thing and misguided revenge, that kind of works.
It's kind of a revenge that works through miseducation, though, as well, which plays more into this stereotype again.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Apparently it all works, even though it's like contrary to current medical practices by quite a wide margin.
It was one of the things they wanted to explore with this episode, and I think they did so fairly efficiently, was like having a modern medicine versus folk medicine sort of feel to it. Because at the same time we see, like, Petey's landlady, who's got the chronic bad back that only his poultice makes better.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting, and I did feel the magic shop lady was a bit of a weird tangent to go on.
Oh, the woman they go to ask about puppets.
Yeah, at the same time, it's you'd think it'd be sort of said to all her friends, like, yeah, these two FBI agents came in asking about puppets. The weirdest thing I've ever seen.
I do think it's really hard to get a pinch on what kind of folk magic we were getting for, because they hedge their bets an awful lot as well. Because, not all folk magics were created equal.
Yeah.
So the puppet as a concept, I quite like folk magic. It's quite interesting. But the earliest written mention of a puppet comes from the work of Geoffrey Chaucer. So you're looking at England in the 10th century.
Yeah.
So it's a very medieval, very English concept. There are theories that it actually came from Scandinavia and it's much older than that, but this is the actual solid depiction of it we have. Though in this episode, they keep mentioning that it's Celtic or Gaelic, which again, I apologise for any Scottish or Irish viewers. People are very sensitive about you getting the two mixed up as well. They're not interchangeable. They are very different cultures. And there are also different types of things, because you have things like Welsh Gaelic and Isle of Man Gaelic and things like that. It's not all equal, and it's not all equal, and it's not two kind of cultures you can merge.
Yeah.
Especially as I'm not sure the puppet is actually connected to either of them. I have a feeling this is a very kind of anglicised sort of thing. But at the same time, what we have seen in this episode, and even Mulder keeps saying hoodoo is not European folk magic at all. Hoodoo's African. And that's where we get the idea of the voodoo doll, which is also something that's heavily criticised because there's no evidence really that puppets were ever used in voodoo. It's just this idea that Hollywood have given us that is voodoo, sticking pins in a doll. So you've got this very complex idea where they seem to be mismashing all these terms and not using any of them correctly, just because folk magic inherently looks creepy, essentially.
Yeah, which this episode has John Shaban on it, so should we be that surprised?
You often see in American folk magic as well, things like the cornhusk doll, which is similar to a puppet. Because, that's a very Salem-y sort of thing, which, again, is a different part of America, but it's perhaps more of a westernised image that would be better used than the hoodoo doll.
Not sure where to go from that, other than...
Yeah, sorry. I like my folk magics.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's good background that the episode has got so much wrong.
I'm not sure wrong. I think they've just mixed a lot of things. Because they even change their tone, because Mulder calls him the hoodoo man to a point, and then switches to it, it's probably Gaelic or Celtic, halfway through, like we hadn't want to go the full route like we did with Fresh Bones and kind of completely misrepresent hoodoo as well.
Yeah. One thing I did notice this episode, and it's kind of a repetitive running thing in this season, is Scully asking Mulder, this is an X-File, why are we here? And it's kind of thing you used to get in season 1, and then they kind of completely abandoned it for the rest of them, and it was the whole, you could do this occasionally that Scully doesn't understand what it is, and then Mulder explain it, and that's it. But it seems to happen quite a lot of late that, Scully just says, this is an X-File, why are we here? And why are we doing this?
Yeah.
I don't understand why this is here now. Has everyone forgotten how the brief of the series?
Yeah.
Is, Mulder will bring you here for a reason. I don't understand why you keep asking this question.
Apparently he doesn't fill her in before they go ever as well.
No, and given that they've... Again, this is California, so they've had to get on a plane, fly all the way out there. It's like, I'm wondering if the writers have forgotten that when they're setting things in LA, the characters aren't based in LA at all. They have to fly out here. And they just say, they just driven down the road. No, they've flown across country.
I feel there's a lack of empirical evidence here as well, because they look at this crime scene and Scully's suggestion is that a man somehow slit his throat and then hung himself after writing his name on the wall in a lot of blood.
Yeah, Scully, how does that...
But even then Mulder says, it can't be the family because they called it in. It's like, no, Mulder, let's kind of use the a posteriori evidence we have here. Empirical truth says it's the blooming family.
Yeah. Also, we watched Gothica on Friday.
Yeah.
And we spent quite a lot of the film trying to work out who actually killed Charles Dutton.
Yeah.
And at one point it looked like it was Halle Berry's character had killed her own husband. And we said, that's too easy, that's too obvious. And then it turned out, yes, she had because she was possessed.
Well, that's a good spoiler there, Nick.
21-year-old film, I think we're fine. Or no, even that, 25-year-old film. We'll be fine. But anyway, the point was, though, we kept trying to speculate in this case, it can't be her, it's too obvious. And then it was her. Oh, but she's possessed by a ghost. That's terrible.
I'm sure that'll stand up in court.
Yeah. She got away with it. She managed to kill 2 people in this film and she got away scot-free.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
So I'm pretty sure the courts don't work like this. But yeah, like he's done this one, I think it's the whole, him doing it to himself doesn't make sense, because it's the whole, he slit his throat and wrote his name in blood and then hung himself. Whereas if you influence the doctor, the main doctor, to do that to his father-in-law, that would have made it work a bit better.
You're good at remembering names. What's the John Carpenter movie with the devil, where the guy manages to crucify himself?
I wasn't John Carpenter, but that was End of Days.
That's End of Days.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking when watching it, the scene where they're trying to argue that a man crucified himself on the ceiling.
Yes. And I was wondering, how do you get the other nail in there? It's like, you're missing a lot of points here. How do you do any of it? That is not something you can do to yourself.
But ditto here.
Yeah.
Our excuse is that he's got kuru, which I would like to note as well is the same disease that they all have in our town, and yet we treat it like a new thing, as the X-Files frequently does. It even makes the comment about, isn't that what New Guinea tribesmen get from eating people's brains? And we didn't connect this to our other cannibalism case.
Yeah, and that feels odd given that Vince Gilligan is one who explicitly referenced Squeeze in his first episode, which was Soft Light.
But also, why did this not spark an investigation? As he's got a disease that you've said is commonly gained from eating brains.
Yeah.
You've had a case where this was also the case.
We should probably
Are we not going to investigate this further?
Nope, we're just going to be blasé and think it's the family who did this. Well, he did it to himself.
But also, it draws attention to it, I think, more in the novelisation of Our Town rather than the episode. But Kuru causes tremors. You see at the end of the Our Town novel, I think it's the town's doctor is shaking quite noticeably, and Scully notes that that's the symptom he's coming down with it. So a disease which is characterised by full-body tremors. This guy, with this illness, has slit his own throat, very precisely written thief across the wall, and hung himself.
Yep. I don't know what you're worried about. I don't see what you're complaining about. It's fine. Perfect length of wire, though, so he's just dangling just like a centimetre off the floor as well.
So it looked like he was just standing there when the guy came and tapped his shoulder. Yeah.
Also, we have to have words about Mr. Petey's teleportation trickery, where he just does slit in and out of rooms and disappears without much effort.
And in corridors, there's a bit where he's talking to Robert standing in the doorway at the hospital, and when Robert follows him into the corridor, he's nowhere in sight.
Yeah.
I'd buy it more, I think, if Mr. Petey was a vengeful ghost.
Yeah, that would have been worked a bit better.
Mm.
But I did see in the notes it was something about part of the idea was for the Doctor to have a deep, dark secret that's haunting him.
Yeah.
And I can see that kind of being in there a part, but the problem is that the Doctor did what he could for this girl who he thought was not going to have a good way of life, just sort of pushed her to die slightly sooner than
It's not even a good way of life. She was dying.
Yeah, she was dying. But then you've got the whole, that doesn't appear to be haunting him because he's almost completely forgotten about this. I mean, he remembers the case when it's brought up, but it's not something that gets to him normally.
No.
And he also doesn't know her names. And when Mr. Petey says, oh, Lynette Petey, she's the one who did this.
I think that's your kind of backwards problem, though, of Oral Petey seemingly entirely uneducated. He can't even spell the word thief.
Yeah.
So he has got this revenge thing, because he wasn't even there. He's assumed they could save her. And he also has this kind of backwards hatred of medicine, of the idea, because at the end when he's torturing Robert, he's saying, if I was there I could have saved her, and Robert's saying, but you weren't there.
Yeah.
Because that's left the open question, because even Scully wonders at the end if Petey had been there, could he have saved her? But it's a moot point, he wasn't there.
Yes, and maybe he could, because he just seemed to have magic stuff. But at the same time, the disease that Robert's wife gets, Nan gets,
yes,
he is able to treat that successfully with modern medicine.
I looked up that one too. I can't remember the name of the illness. I had to Google a transcript of the script to find it because they say it so fast. But essentially, it is a African disease. It's a parasitic organism that's spread by the bite of sandflies. And essentially, it creates skin lesions that are similar to the lesions you get from leprosy, but it's nowhere near as dangerous a disease as leprosy. It's just hard to treat these lesions.
Okay.
So, it's a nasty, disfiguring skin ailment, essentially. Which I think they portrayed quite well. It did look a lot like leprosy when she suddenly rapidly came down with it.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
But he was able to retreat that. So it's the whole, yes, while Mr. Petey can direct this at a moment's notice, modern medicine can undo it where possible.
Well, it couldn't have undone Kuru, though. Kuru's fatal.
Well, no. But then that's also led me to wonder, how on earth does Petey know about these two illnesses?
These very obscure African illnesses.
Papua New Guinea.
Well, one from Papua New Guinea, one from Africa.
Yeah. Ones that aren't in general news. If you say he's given him Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, I can buy that in 2000.
Well, that's what Kuru basically is.
Yeah.
It's another prion disease.
But if that was what it was in the year 2000, I could have bought that because that would be in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
The other one, the skin lesions one, I've never heard of that.
No.
How does Mr. Petey, the uneducated man who can do folk remedies, know what that is to give it to someone?
I guess so. You could even argue that everybody's heard of the flesh-eating virus. So
yeah,
that one...
The landlady makes sense.
Mm.
I did think he overreacted a bit, just finding a dead body and giving her a flesh-eating disease.
She's got that kind of Bluebeard's Chamber sort of feel to her, though, where he's kept trying to see her off, a bit like the landlady in Too Shy as well. And she's just kept being nosier and nosier until it's cost her.
Yeah. It's slightly weird. Also, it feels like a weird one because basically it's just there to make Mulder realise that no, he's not falling in for their trap. He's off after the Doctor and Scully when they're off hiding.
Yeah. I will say, it sounds like I'm digging at this because I can pick a lot at the folklore, the stereotyping, the choices of disease, that sort of thing. I actually really like the episode. I think it's one of the more effective ones. In fact, one reviewer I read, it might have been Emily van der Veff, said that it's probably been the scariest episode since season 5.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that one because it's he basically feels unstoppable and there's no guard against it.
He's very scary, and his motivation doesn't make logical sense because he's just so upset and so out for revenge he can't be reasoned with.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no stopping him. He's a scary foe, it's a scary episode. Just the thought of targeting people with deadly, debilitating diseases is frightening because there's no way to guard against it.
Yeah. I mean, your only defences are like better door locks so you can't break in and put the dirt under your sheets.
Or finding a way to get rid of his little poppets without evidently setting them on fire, because that is what happened in what I will call the hilarious MRI scene.
Ah, yes, I know you like that one.
Yeah, I appreciate its magic. I'm not going to pick it too far. But you know, the fact that the whole point of an MRI machine is there's no radiation in it. It's not a microwave.
But that's why the popper was in the microwave, and that's why she did get microwaved.
But it's not a microwave, there's no radiation. Even when he said it's got as much radiation as a dental x-ray, it doesn't even have that. It's not doing an x-ray.
To be fair to them, he did say there's no malfunction with the machine, despite one of the screens saying malfunction in big letters when they burst into the room. No malfunction in the machine. It's all magic.
How could it malfunction that badly?
It's all magic. It's the microwave. You said so yourself.
I guess you could buy as well as if magic works on the power of suggestion, oral PT is not going to understand how an MRI machine works. You know, he could be thinking, it's giving her an x-ray, it's radiation. And he's got that idea of how it works.
I will say, I feel like the whole MRI machine scene was written because one of them thought it was a good idea. Because follow the chain of logic is that Mr. PT doesn't get a lot of modern technology. I mean, we don't know to what degree he doesn't.
He says, or at least he claims he's only ever heard of a microwave. He's never seen one.
But he's sitting there with the vending machine, twisting it round, buys the popcorn, and then sort of says, doesn't look like any popcorn. And the guy says, you have to put it in the microwave first. And he says, the wonders of technology. And then puts the popcorn in, and then hits a load of buttons on the keypad, enough to get the microwave to start working and actually do the popcorn. Now, I'll point out that our microwave, you as an enlightened person in the 21st century, struggle with our microwave.
To be fair, our microwave doesn't have any words on it. They're little symbols. Yeah. How am I supposed to know what they mean? But yeah, it is my mental block, is that Mr. PT can use a microwave better than I can.
But I don't buy that he would know how to do that.
Yeah. Maybe their microwave actually had words on it and not just arcane symbols.
But given the likely things on the microwave, there'll be like power, duration maybe, and then you've still got to press things in the right order to then set the timer to get the microwave to start working, don't you?
There wouldn't have been any risk if Mr. PT had tried to use our microwave to get in there.
But I don't buy he could have used their microwave either, because I think it would be this whole sort of... I can believe that there was a scene where he got the medical students to show him what to do to use the microwave to get the popcorn out. And then he repeated it with the poppet. And that's been cut down for whatever reason because of time constraints. But removing that scene means he just inexplicably can use a microwave when he doesn't seem familiar with so many other things.
Yeah.
It feels weird. I mean, he is also a stealth grave robber because it's not going to be easy to dig up a corpse in the middle of a graveyard in the middle of... That's a busy road they were next to.
It's also a mass grave. She only had a number rather than a name because they didn't know who she was. So he'd have to know exactly which Jane Doe was Lynette to get her.
Well, I was thinking about this before because I was going to say, if you want to go on that route, you also say, how did he know that doctor was the one responsible? And I'm
going to keep saying magic.
Well, I was going to say, I'm quite willing to believe folk magic means that's how you found out who he was. Also how he located his daughter, because there's no good, as you say, there's no good way for him to find that grave.
I presume that if he'd been able to identify Jane Doe as Lynette, she would have been interred to the family grave or whatever. Yeah. You know, she would have been returned to her people in West Virginia, or how they put it prior to this. She wouldn't have been essentially put in a pauper's grave.
But it's because she didn't have any ID, and that comes back to there's potentially, or was some other story about why this happened to Lynette that we are now missing.
It seems funny that I presume when they said it was a bus crash, it means she was on the bus.
Yeah.
Why do these people with these kind of fears of technology, why would she be so far away and on public transportation?
What comes back to my point at the start is I don't know if she was trying to leave. She's had some taste of the outside world and doesn't want Oral's world anymore. She's trying to leave.
Yeah.
And that would be my best guess at what they might be trying to hint at. I mean, it's entirely possible this is just a thing that has to be true for the rest of the episode to work, rather than anything given any more thought to. I don't know. But I would agree, it's an effective, scary episode, and he's actually very threatening. And hey, he's still alive at the end, and he could totally take revenge on Mulder and or Scully.
I think he's a dangerous one to keep alive as well, because his powers are incredible, even though they've removed his charm, I guess is the only thing
Yeah.
you can say. But you get the impression that if he comes out, there's not much they can actually keep him for, because he hasn't physically hurt anyone.
No.
And he'd just go straight back after Robert and his daughter again.
Yeah. But we know, unfortunately, that he will wake up. He's also passed away, so he can't.
Oh, the actor has.
The actor has passed away.
Oh, what a shame.
2018, yeah, I think he was 79.
I do think that ethically the question behind this episode is kind of interesting too, because it puts you in the place of, if you were in Robert's position, what would you do?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, if she really was beyond saving, would probably agree that he did the right thing.
Yes.
But as Mulder pointed out in a slightly harsh way in this episode, I felt as well, it's like, would her family think that?
Yeah. Again, it's like that was apparently one of the incentives for the whole idea, and it just doesn't feel like that comes across very well at all, because it's not a dark secret that's haunted him, because you'd have more of that, him getting that award would give him trouble when he's actually quite pleased to have this award.
It should be noted as well that I read online that some people think the inspiration for this was taken from a case involving a woman called Libby Zion, which has actually led to a law being passed in the United States.
Okay.
I personally can't see the connection, but I think that if you'd lent more into the Libby Zion case, oral piety would have more motivation. Because Libby Zion was a woman who was taken to hospital. She's actually the daughter of, I can't remember who it was some eminent American journalist of the time. But essentially she was brought into hospital. The people treating her were overworked and didn't focus her on correctly. She was given 2 different sorts of medications that caused a reaction, and they didn't notice she was having a reaction. They just strapped her down, essentially, and she died because of this reaction.
Okay.
So laws have been passed now in America called the Libby Zion Law, which basically means that untrained interns have to be supervised by a fully trained physician at all times, just to prevent anyone untrained giving incorrect doses like this.
Yeah.
This is not any connection to this, even though people have likened it, because Robert was an incredibly experienced doctor and he did what he did knowingly. If you had made him something that happened years before when he was an untrained physician, he did it by accident and covered it up.
Yeah.
You would have the motivation there.
Yeah, I feel that was the genesis of the idea, and that's not been so muddled that basically he's blameless by the end.
Because if he said things like, he did mention they were busy at the time, there were so many people they had to triage.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention and I gave her the wrong medication.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah.
That would at least justify.
Because then
all
you could
PTSD.
make the argument of, she may well have died, but that could have also been a story he told himself to reassure himself, and it could have been that she could have survived if he'd given her the right medication.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that's kind of what they're going for, and that he's justifying it to himself, but that's not how any of the framing works.
Yeah.
And it's like that last bit from Mulder at the end there is sort of feels a bit trying to get it back into it.
But also Scully's read the case file and she says at the end, I would have done the same thing,
Yeah.
which infers that Robert was correct and he did euthanize someone who was dying.
Yeah.
I know euthanasia is a hot topic, but when it seems so clear-cut like that and he's saying, I took away 20 minutes of her life when she would have been in agony,
Yeah.
it feels justifiable and doesn't feel worth the wrath that's been brought down upon him.
No. And I feel that's... This makes me think of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Oh, the one with Jackie L. Hurley or whatever he's called.
Yeah, where there's, for a good chunk of the film, they're trying to imply that he was killed wrongly, and that being, like, a more suitable motivation for Freddy Krueger's whole post-death rampage.
Yeah, the idea is, supposedly in that film, some kids lied and pinned him as a paedophile. He was murdered by the vengeful parents, and for most of the movie you think that he's been wronged, and then it turns out he was a paedophile at the end of it.
Yeah, and it's the whole... But I bought into the dream revenge thing. He's still in the wrong, and he's still bad for killing people, but I can see his justification. Now it's, you were caught doing exactly what they said you were doing and killed for it, and yeah, here you are, taking revenge for something that you did.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of a problem with the original Nightmare on Elm Street as well, but...
He was never a paedophile in
Oh, no, he wasn't, but he was still killed for what he was accused of.
Oh, yeah, he was guilty.
So it does feel like, I don't know, I sometimes overthink things, but if you're going to do this, if you kill someone for the wrong reason, that makes their revenge feel more right than if you killed them and it turns out, yes, they did exactly what they accused them of, and they're just going to keep on going.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just feels revenge makes sense rather than I'm just going to shift planes of existence. Like, although the Frighteners, I bought the Frighteners one because that was, he was trying to be the most prolific serial killer, got killed and kept on going.
Yeah.
And that worked fine. It depends on how you frame it, I think, ultimately.
Yeah. And I will say, we keep sniping at Teeth, but
it's a shame.
I like it a lot. It's a very effective, and it's actually a very scary episode.
It is. I mean, yeah, for all our faults, it's really good. And Kim Manners hasn't popped up to say, oh, by the way, Oral Petey was in the right at the end there.
Kim Manners actually said they had problems filming with this one because he was given the script at such a late stage that they had to kind of wing and do things on the fly. But I think it came out very well, all things considered.
It works. I mean, I think the problem I think you kind of highlighted before is if you know anything about folk magic and folk medicine, you start going, hang on, this is just a complete mess.
I also think we've largely moved away from the kind of illiterate, kind of low IQ hick as well.
Yeah.
You know, this was a horror stereotype in the 70s. This is The Hills Have Eyes. This is the original Wrong Turn movies in the 80s, you know, that sort of
90s,
era.
90s.
Was it the 90s? Was Wrong Turn really that late?
They were 90s into 2000s.
But even when we remade a Wrong Turn a few years ago, we've moved away from the illiterate hicks.
Yeah, I would say remake has lots of inverted commas on it because that's one of the loosest remakes I've ever seen of anything in my life.
I think it's pretty good.
No, pretty good. It's not the same film.
Oh, it's an entirely different sort of film, which I think is why the fans of the original ultra mega violent Wrong Turn films were disappointed by the remake.
Well, it's like Black Christmas. It's one of these whole, if you called it something else, you wouldn't have the name to trade on, but the backlash probably would have been softened because you're not
comparing it.
Yeah, you're not drawing a comparison you shouldn't draw. There's no reason to make that comparison.
Oh yeah, I think for like Wrong Turn and Black Christmas, if you separate the things, I'm not counting the 2006 Black Christmas, which is just abysmal.
But it is a faithful remake.
But it is a more faithful remake, it's true. If you split them out, they're all kind of enjoyable films in their own right.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of the Black Christmas, the feminist one that was released a couple of years ago, comparing to the original Black Christmas, it's like comparing kind of like beer to water.
True. Well, I mean, to be fair, up to a point, it is kind of a remake, and they just veer so wildly off base and turns into something else.
But Wrong Turn's exactly the same. You know, if you want your violent inbred Hicks movie, you've got the old ones. That's not what the new film is.
Yeah, so call it something else.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're going to call it, but it's something else. But I do feel that Teeth could have been better if it was more, I don't know, you want kind of more of the folk medicine versus modern medicine. I think, as you said, they kind of lost that as an idea in the episode. It gets very muddled.
The closest you get is to the poultice. The only thing healing that woman's back is his folk medicine. And, you know, folk medicine does have its benefits. A lot of modern medicine is rooted from folk medicine.
Yeah. Well, it's like chewing the bark of, is it willow trees where aspen comes from?
Yep.
Yeah, that was it.
Correct.
I can see that progression of stuff. That makes sense.
Well, you even have to this day is, if you get a poorly tummy, my mum will tell you to have some ginger tea because ginger does settle your stomach. It's a known fact.
Exactly. So it just feels like you could have had more of that. And I think the X-Files has done it occasionally. I'm trying to think of a good example where they've actually done modern medicine versus folky stuff. The aliens don't count because aliens are just a whole lot of
They haven't
headache.
really, because when we've seen folk magic in the X-Files, it's just been magic, like in Fresh Bones.
Yeah, I suppose so.
We haven't really seen it compared to modern techniques.
Yeah, so I think that would be... It's a way you could have done an ambiguity at the end. I mean, you have to research the episode, but it's the whole someone with a disease and it's Mr. Petey versus the doctor in terms of who can actually heal this thing. Like, if Lynette was the central figure in it and still alive and both of them were trying to treat her, the doctor gives up and Mr. Petey comes and does something. Scully looks at the results afterwards and it's not clear if the last thing the doctor did took some time to take effect versus what Petey has done.
I think, and again, we're playing into Kim tells you how she'd rewrite the episode when she really shouldn't. I would have gone that Mr. Petey has a change of heart. His wife has something incurable and he heals her.
Yeah.
From something that should be incurable. We're talking like Miracle Man style, where you had the woman with the crippling arthritis.
Or anything with the alien powers.
You know, let's say his wife has something that's going to kill her, like spinal meningitis or something like that.
Yeah.
She's beyond the reach of medical intervention. Mr. Petey heals her in the last, having had his change of heart.
Yeah.
And then you would have had the lingering question of, could Mr. Petey have also saved Lynette?
Yeah. I mean, I feel we're also drifting into the Green Mile here.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you also have to have Mr. Petey die at the end for the same bleak thing of, what did you do? That was a stupid thing to do.
Like John Coffey.
Yeah. Like, don't kill John Coffey. Oh, but you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've rewritten the episode. But I mean, I think it's important to note that, yes, we do like the episode and it's good and effective. It has the bones of something better left in it that you could have done something else with, and they just haven't.
I think you could have done more, especially to kind of strengthen that motivation that Oral Petey has.
Yeah. Or you should have made it more simplistic for the revenge fantasies. That works fine as a plot line. You've just thrown too much other chaff in here that's muddled that message. So yeah, either make it more complicated or make it more simple, but you've reached a middle ground that doesn't work right. It's a good episode, but it could have been better.
It's a good episode. It's a creepy and effective episode, and I think it's got one of the best stings we've seen in a long time, because that is shocking, the opening of it.
I mean, it's the whole our An Evil episode. I mean, after First Person Shooter, this is a real high milestone.
I think I read a review, and again, I can't remember who to credit this to. It might have been Emily van der Veff again, who said it's the best non-experimental episode in the season so far, and I think that's probably fair argument. We've commented already that they've done a lot of weird things this season. This is a very standard episode, but it's done very well.
Yes. And it doesn't mean they shouldn't shy away from that as much as they've tried to. Do we have anything else?
No, I think that's fair.
So next time we get a pair of headaches, but we're also going to put an asterisk next to one of these.
I like you giggling. What we got?
So we got Enemy, which has the big asterisk next to it of, yes, we know, we can't talk about it yet. That has to wait until season 11.
Oh, it's that episode.
Yeah, we know exactly what people think of it. We cannot get into it yet. We must ignore
To explain vaguely, it's an episode that people's opinions have changed on over the years.
It's been retconned very badly.
But now we're treating it as it first appears. Yeah. We'll talk about the change of opinion on it later.
Yeah, so we'll reiterate this next time. We know this has been retconned. We cannot get into that yet because, frankly, it's unfair to William B. Davis, who do produce this episode. I'm pretty sure it's unfair to how the episode plays out. We'll get into what Chris Carter did later. The other episode, though, oh boy, is Chimera, or Chimera, however you want to pronounce that word. The episode no one remembers.
Is Chimera the one with the crows?
Yes.
Right, yes. I know which one we're on.
In the meantime, if you would like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also get us on social media, and please do hook me up if you'd like me to promote anything at the start of the show. Be it any fan events, conventions, neat bits of art you've got on the go, anything so long as it's X-Files related. You can find us on Twitter and Tumblr, we are at GetStrange42. On Mastodon, we are at GetStrange42@universedon.com. And on Facebook, you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. Additionally, and if you're not sick of my voice by now, I also have a stream on Twitch TV called Adverse Canva 42, where I stream whatever I'm currently playing on PlayStation 5. I do little ad hoc streams as and when, which you can find by following Adverse Canva 42 on Twitter, but my main streams are Mondays and Wednesdays at 8pm GMT and Saturdays at 5pm GMT. Currently, the two games I have on the go are Yakuza Kiwami, which I play during my regular streams, and Cyberpunk 2077, which I just play on an as-and-when basis.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsargettingstrange, where you can find our Let's Play of the first X-Files FMV game, our review of Mulder and Scully by Catatonia, and our review of Goblins by Charles Grant, shortly to be followed by our review of Whirlwind by the same author.
Hooray!
Hooray, if we can remember it. Our theme music is Vision by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on Compotech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember,
I'll always keep you guessing.